The bridge of the Sovereign Dawn stank of death. Commander Vex Thara clutched her shattered thorax, violet blood pumping between her chitinous fingers as she watched her fleet die. The tactical display told the story in cold, merciless numbers. 18 ships remaining of the Corvathi defense fleet. 18 from 400 that had met the scourge at the edge of their space. Another icon winked out. 17. "Commander!" her tactical officer gasped, his exoskeleton cracked and leaking. "The harvester ships are in position over the homeworld. They're beginning the processing." Through the view screen, Vex could see them, massive organic vessels like floating tumors, their feeding appendages descending through Corvathal Prime's atmosphere like the fingers of some cosmic horror. She'd seen intelligence footage from other worlds, seen what the scourge did to populations. They didn't simply kill, they harvested, dissolved living tissue while the victims were still conscious, rendering entire civilizations down to their base proteins, absorbing their screams, their terror, their agony. 7 billion souls, her people, her children's children. "All weapons spent," Tactical reported, "shields failing. Commander, we're out of options." Vex stared at the display. The Scourge fleet surrounded them, thousands of ships, each one a nightmare of pulsing organic plating and jagged metal spines. In 200 years, they'd consumed 17 civilizations. The Corvathi would be the 18th.
"Unless. Open encrypted file Omega-7, she ordered quietly. The bridge went silent. Her communications officer turned, all three eyes widening. "Commander, that's the human contact protocol. The Council expressly forbade." "The Council is ash and meat," Vex interrupted, her voice like breaking glass. "Their homeworld was the third planet harvested. I am the ranking military authority of what remains of our species, and I am invoking emergency first contact protocols with species classification. Extremely hazardous." She pulled up the file. It had sat in their xenological databases for 2 centuries, flagged with warnings in a dozen dead languages. The species call themselves humans. They'd been observed from a distance, never contacted, because every simulation, every predictive model, every psychological analysis came back with the same assessment. Unpredictable, hyper-violent, species-level threat. Do not engage under any circumstances. But buried in the warnings, there was something else. A single line that had haunted Vex since she'd first read it as a cadet. Note: species demonstrates extreme protective response to extinction events affecting weaker civilizations. Motive: unknown. Approach: suicidal. Send the distress call, Vex commanded. All channels. Emergency frequency. Maximum power. Aim it at the human quarantine zone. Commander, they might not even. Send it. The message burned across subspace, piercing toward a region of space the civilized galaxy had collectively agreed to avoid. To any human vessels, automated distress call. The Corvathi species faces immediate extinction. Scourge fleet conducting harvesting operations. 7 billion civilians being processed alive. Our fleet is destroyed. We cannot stop them. If there is any mercy in your species, any honor, any compassion, please. We are dying. We need help. We need. The transmission cut off as a Scourge plasma lance punched through the Sovereign Dawn's port shields. Vex was thrown across the bridge, her command chair torn free of its moorings. She hit the bulkhead hard, felt ribs crack, tasted blood. Through failing vision, she watched the tactical display. The Scourge were closing for the kill, moving in aboard, to harvest them while they still lived. The display flickered. 16 ships. 15. 14. We're going to die, Vex thought distantly. And I've doomed us to die with false hope. Humans were 500 light years away. Even if they received the message, even if they cared, they'd never arrive in time. Her vision darkened. Captain Sarah Chun was 3 beers into her shore leave when the alert hit her neural implant like an ice pick through the skull. Priority Omega. All volunteer vessels respond. Extinction event in progress. She was on her feet before her conscious mind caught up. the bar spinning around her. Around the room, 24 other humans were doing the same. Freelancers, merchants, ex-military, the kind of people who lived in the spaces between civilizations. The kind of people who chose to be out here. Sarah's ship, the Reckoning, was a brawler-class corvette, officially decommissioned military hardware, unofficially loaded with enough firepower to level a small city. She'd bought it at auction after the Terraform Wars. Most of her crew had similar stories. She was in the pilot's seat within 5 minutes, fingers dancing across controls that responded to thought as much as touch. Captain, her XO, Marcus Webb, slid into the co-pilot's seat, already pulling up the distress call. "You seeing this?" Sarah read the message, felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. "Scourge," she said quietly. "Yeah." Marcus pulled up the tactical data. "Fuck, they're harvesting. Active processing on populated worlds. Estimated 7 billion. I can read, Marcus." She pulled up the ship's combat roster. 12 crew, light armament by human standards, 2 mass drivers, a dozen missile pods, point defense lasers. They were a corvette, for Christ's sake, built for piracy suppression and escort duty. The tactical projection showed the Scourge fleet. Thousands of vessels. "We can't fight that," Marcus said. Not arguing, just stating fact. "No," Sarah agreed. She opened the fleet channel. "But we're not going alone." The channel lit up. Dozens of responses, then hundreds. Volunteer ships responding to the call. She recognized some of the signatures. The absolutely no mercy, Captain Zhang's heavy cruiser. The fuck around, Captain Rodriguez's missile destroyer. The find out, her sister ship. Volunteer fleet forming up, tactical reported. Current count, 417 vessels. More arriving every minute. Sarah felt something fierce and hot bloom in her chest. This was what humans did. What they'd always done. Someone screamed for help. You answered. Even if it killed you. Especially if it killed you. Navigation, plot a jump to these coordinates, she ordered. Weapons, I want every missile loaded and armed. Marcus, send a message to whoever's coordinating this mess. Tell them the first volunteer fleet is en route. What should we tell them about our intentions? Marcus asked. Sarah smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Tell them we're going to explain the Geneva suggestions to some ugly motherfuckers who've never heard of them. She engaged the FDL drive. Space twisted, reality bent, and the Reckoning leaped across the stars. Behind her, 416 other ships did the same. Vexthara woke to screaming. Her bridge crew was dead, torn apart. The Scourge boarding party had already breached. She could hear them moving through the ship, their wet, chittering sounds as they hunted survivors. Processing them alive. Feeding. She tried to move, couldn't. Her lower body was pinned under debris. Violet blood pooled around her. Through the shattered view screen, she could see Corvithel Prime, could see the harvester ships at work, their feeding tentacles glowing with bioluminescence as they drained her world of life. I'm sorry, she thought to her people. I failed you. The tactical display was still active. Somehow, she could see the last 3 Corvathi ships being pulled apart by Scourge grappler vessels. Could see the thousands of enemy ships surrounding her world like flies on a corpse. Then the display flickered. New contacts. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Emerging from FDL at the edge of the system in a burst of exotic radiation that made the sensor scream. Vex stared. Her translator must be malfunctioning because the sensor classification kept reading. Human. It couldn't be. They were too far. The message had only gone out 20 minutes ago. It would take days for them to... The human fleet didn't slow down. Didn't pause at the edge of the system to assess threats or form battle lines. They came in hot, their FDL drives spooling down at velocities that should have torn their ships apart. They were already firing before they'd fully dropped to sublight, missiles streaking ahead on trails of fusion fire. Vex watched, barely breathing, as the first wave hit the Scourge outer picket. The explosions were wrong. Too big, too violent. The Scourge vessels didn't just die. They evaporated, torn apart by weapons that seemed to ignore shields entirely. She watched a Scourge battleship, a vessel that had shrugged off everything the Corvathi fleet could throw at it, simply cease to exist as a human missile punched through it. The Scourge fleet turned to engage. Thousands of weapons lighting up the dark. Plasma lances that could melt continents, bioweapons that could consume fleets, gravitic weapons that could crack moons. The human ships flew through it like they didn't care. No, Vix Guisperth. No, that's not possible. Nothing can. A human corvette, barely larger than a Corvathi fighter, took a direct hit from a Scourge plasma lance. The kind of hit that had destroyed her dreadnoughts. Its shields flared, held for 3 seconds, then failed. The ship kept coming, kept firing. Chunks of armor boiling away. Internal atmosphere venting in frozen clouds. It rammed straight into a Scourge destroyer at relativistic speeds. Both ships vanished in a fireball that registered as a minor stellar event. Ancestors preserve us, someone breathed. Vex turned her head painfully. Her communications officer was alive, crushed under a fallen beam, staring at the display with all 3 eyes. They're insane, he whispered. The humans are insane. More humans were jumping in. Bigger ships now. Vex saw the designations: Dreadnought, Carrier, Battleship. Vessels that dwarfed anything the Corvathi had built. They came in firing, their weapons lighting up the system like a new sun being born. A human dreadnought, the Absolute Zero, plowed directly into the Scourge formation. It wasn't using sophisticated tactics. It wasn't trying to preserve itself. It was just killing. Mass drivers firing at point-blank range, railguns tearing through armor, missiles launching in swarms so dense they looked like fog. Scourge ships died, then died again, then kept dying. Vex watched a human vessel. She thought it was called a destroyer, get swarmed by 30 Scourge fighters. Should have been overwhelmed. Instead, it activated some kind of weapon she'd never seen before. Space around it seemed to fold, and all 30 fighters were crushed into a singularity the size of a fist. What were they using? Her communications officer gasped. Everything, Vex realized. They're using everything. She'd read the files. Knew humans came from a death world where everything was trying to kill them. Knew they'd spent 10,000 years developing weapons to kill each other. She thought she understood what that meant. She'd been wrong. The human fleet wasn't following any tactical doctrine she recognized. Ships would break formation to chase down individual Scourge vessels with what looked like personal vendetta. They'd sacrifice position to take impossible shots. One human cruiser, the probably fine, actually stopped in the middle of the battle to pick up escape pods from a destroyed Scourge vessel, only to dump them into a nearby star 30 seconds later. They're not fighting to win, Vex whispered. They're fighting to make it hurt. The Scourge fleet, for the first time in recorded history, tried to retreat. The humans didn't let them. Vex watched ships break away from the main fight to run down fleeing Scourge vessels. Watched a human battleship, the war crime in progress, chase a Scourge command ship across half the system before cornering it against a gas giant and pounding it into cosmic dust. But the Harvester ships over Corvathil Prime, those were still active, still feeding. She could see the death toll climbing on her sensors. Millions dead. Tens of millions. A new contact appeared on her display. Massive. Larger than anything else in the system. The designation read, United Earth Systems DRE DNOU GHT, Geneva Convention. Oh no, Vex breathed. The Geneva Convention dropped out of FTL directly above Corvathil Prime. It was 3 kilometers of armored fury, bristling with weapons that Vex sensors couldn't even classify. It didn't fire on the Harvester ships. It fell on them, using its own mass and gravity drives. The dreadnought dropped through the atmosphere like the fist of an angry god. It hit the first Harvester ship at terminal velocity, and Vex watched through ground-based sensors as the impact generated a shockwave that could be seen from orbit. The dreadnought emerged from the explosion, its armor glowing white-hot, and opened fire on the next Harvester. Then the next. It moved through the upper atmosphere like a shark through blood, tearing the Harvester ships apart with a brutality that made Vex's earlier description of the Scourge seem quaint. In orbit, the remaining Scourge fleet was dying. The humans had them surrounded now, and what followed wasn't a battle. It was an execution. Vex watched Scourge bioships, living vessels that could regenerate from nearly any damage, get hit with something the humans called antimatter torpedoes. The ships didn't just die. They unexisted, their matter converting to pure energy in bursts that outshone the system's star. She watched Scourge command vessels, massive hive ships that coordinated hundreds of smaller craft, get boarded. Not by Marines, by what the humans called drone swarms. Thousands of autonomous killbots that tore through the organic interiors like a plague, leaving nothing but dead tissue and shattered chitin. One Scourge flagship, refusing to die, activated some kind of weapon that tore a hole in space-time itself. A black hole, small and temporary, that should have swallowed everything nearby. The humans flew into it. She watched 3 ships, the fuck this, the fuck that, and the fuck everything, dive into the artificial black hole and emerge on the other side, somehow still firing. The Scourge flagship tried to escape. One of the human ships rammed it. Just rammed it. At near light speed. The explosion was visible 3 systems over. The battle lasted 47 minutes. When it was over, there were no Scourge survivors. The humans had hunted down every single vessel, every escape pod, every piece of debris large enough to potentially harbor survivors. They'd systematically eliminated the Harvester ships over Corvithel Prime, then swept the planet's surface with sensors to find and destroy any Scourge ground forces. The casualty count was staggering. The humans had lost 94 ships, more than 7,000 crew dead. They'd killed 11,000 Scourge vessels. Vex was still pinned in the wreckage of her bridge when the boarding party arrived. She tensed, expecting Scourge. Instead, the airlock blew open with precision charges, and figures in powered armor stormed through. Human armor. She could tell from the proportions, too tall, too broad, designed for a bipedal form with only 2 arms. Contact, one of them shouted. Survivor. Get a medic. They pulled the debris off her with casual strength that would have taken a Korvathi engineering team. One of them, a medic she guessed, immediately started working on her injuries with equipment that looked improvised but effective. You're going to be okay, the medic said. Her translator rendered the human's voice as female, young. We've got you. Can you understand me? Yes, Vex managed. Ow. How did you arrive so quickly? The human laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. We broke about 15 laws of physics getting here. Our drive engineers are going to be pissed when they see what we did to their carefully balanced systems. She jabbed something into Vex's thorax. A painkiller, she realized as the agony faded. But you said you needed help. So we came. 94 ships, Vex whispered. You lost 94 ships. Yeah. The medic's voice went hard. The Scourge killed 7,000 of ours. We killed all of theirs. I'd call that a win. Another human approached. Heavier armor, officer's markings. Commander Vexthara, I presume? I'm Captain Shun of the Reckoning. Your distress call has been answered. The Scourge fleet is destroyed. Your world is secure. What? Vex asked. The painkiller was making her thoughts fuzzy. Why did you help us? Your species doesn't even know us. We kept you quarantined, kept you isolated. Why would you? Captain Shun removed her helmet. Her face was young, human average, with a scar across one cheek and eyes that had seen too much. Because you asked, she said simply. Because you were dying, and you called for help, and that's enough. But the cost will be paid, Chin interrupted. Don't think about that. Just focus on surviving. She turned to her medic. Get her to the Mercy. She needs a trauma suite. Wait, Vex said. The Scourge. They'll come back. They always come back. You've only delayed. Chin smiled. It was the most terrifying expression Vex had ever seen. Oh, we're not done, the human captain said softly. See, we found where they came from. Track their fleet back to their staging grounds. There's a Scourge hive fleet about 300 light years from here. 50,000 ships. Vex felt her blood freeze. You can't fight that. No one can. The Scourge have consumed 17 civilizations. Their hive fleets are. About to find out why you don't fuck with the new species on the block, Chin finished. She put her helmet back on. United Earth Systems just declared the Scourge an existential threat to galactic civilization. Know what that means? No. It means we're mobilizing the war fleet. All of it. Every dreadnought, every carrier, every ship we built during the Terraform Wars, and put in mothballs because they were too dangerous to use on each other. Chen's voice was casual, conversational. It means we're going to their home territory, and we're going to explain, in very small words, why genocide is a bad fucking idea. You're going to invade their territory? Vex couldn't believe what she was hearing. That's suicide. The Scourge home clusters have defensive platforms that can crack planets. They have. Yeah, well, we have kinetic kill vehicles that can crack stars, Chen said, and we've been looking for an excuse to use them. The Scourge just volunteered. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Commander? We're not asking permission. But if you got any intelligence on Scourge positions, fleet dispositions, hive locations, we'd appreciate it. Some of us want this personal. Want to make sure we get every single one. Vex stared at her. You're going to exterminate them. To the last cell, Chun confirmed. They harvest civilizations for food? Fine. They're about to learn what it's like to be on the menu. Welcome to the food chain, fuckers. Humans just got promoted to apex predator. 3 weeks later, Vex stood on the observation deck of the human dreadnought Unreasonable Force and watched humanity go to war. They'd let her heal, let her people recover, provided medical supplies, food, engineering assistance. The Korvathi homeworld was rebuilding, and human volunteers were helping. Just helping, asking for nothing in return. It disturbed her. She kept waiting for the demand for payment, for territory, for submission. It never came. Instead, the humans had asked her to join their fleet. Not to fight. Her injuries were too severe. But to observe, to learn, to carry the story back to what remained of the galactic community. You're going to want to see this, Captain Zhang said, approaching her position. He commanded the Absolutely No Mercy, a heavy cruiser that Vex had learned was considered medium armament by human standards. We're about to jump into the Scourge home cluster. How many ships are you bringing? Vex asked. Zhang smiled. All of them. The tactical display activated, showing the assembled human fleet. Vex felt her mandibles go slack. 10,000 vessels. 10,000. Dreadnoughts the size of asteroids. Carriers that could launch fighter wings numbering in the thousands. Battleships bristling with weapons that made the Korvathi arsenal look like children's toys. And at the center, the flagship, Human Imperative. 5 kilometers of armored death, its weapons systems classified, its capabilities unknown even to most of the human fleet. This is excessive, Vex managed. Yeah, Zhang agreed. We have a tendency toward overkill. But the thing is, Commander, we learned a long time ago that if you're going to do something, you do it right. You don't leave survivors. You don't leave room for doubt. You make a statement that echoes through history. What statement are you making? That humanity protects the weak, Zhang said quietly, and punishes the wicked with extreme prejudice. The fleet jumped. Reality twisted, space screamed, and 10,000 human warships emerged in the heart of Scourge territory. The home cluster was a maze of habitats, station complexes, harvesting platforms, each one built from the rendered remains of conquered civilizations. Millions of Scourge drones swarmed between them. Thousands of warships hung in defensive positions. The humans didn't broadcast warnings, didn't offer surrender. They just started shooting. Vex watched the Human Imperative fire its main weapon, something called a stellar lance, that focused the output of a captured star into a beam of coherent energy. It cut through a Scourge hive station like a hot knife through flesh, the beam continuing on to vaporize 3 more structures behind it. Around the flagship, the rest of the human fleet opened fire with a violence that defied description. Missiles in swarms of tens of thousands. Mass drivers hurling projectiles at relativistic speeds. Energy weapons that seemed to burn reality itself. But the Scourge home cluster was defended by more than just ships. Ancient weapons activated, planetary defense platforms that could crack moons, gravitational weapons that could create artificial singularities, biological horrors that could infect and consume entire fleets. The humans flew through it all with the casual disregard of a species that had evolved on a world where extinction-level events were a regular occurrence. Vex watched a human dreadnought take a direct hit from a planet cracker. Its forward section was simply gone, vaporized by energies that should have destroyed it completely. The remaining 3/4 of the ship kept fighting, its rear weapons still firing, until a repair ship arrived and welded a new front section on. In the middle of combat, while still under fire. That's the probably mostly fine, Jean commented. Lost her bow 4 times in the Terraform Wars. Crew considers it a tradition now. A scourge biological weapon, some kind of directed plague, washed over a human carrier wing. Vex waited for the ships to succumb, for the infection to spread, for the crews to die screaming. Instead, the ship's automated defenses activated, purging the biological contamination with bursts of hard radiation. Then they launched fighters anyway, crewed by humans in sealed suits who probably knew they were contaminated but didn't care. Suicide Vex whispered. No, sans correctif. Calculated risk. Those pilots know the medical ship will have them in quarantine and decontamination within 2 hours. They know our doctors have already developed 7 different treatments for scourge bioweapons. They know they'll probably survive. But even if they don't, he shrugged. They volunteered. They knew what they signed up for. The battle raged for 6 hours. The scourge threw everything they had at the human fleet. Ancient weapons from extinct civilizations. Horrors pulled from pocket dimensions. Bioweapons that could consume stars. Machines that could manipulate time itself. The humans destroyed it all. Not quickly. Not cleanly. Vex watched human ships die. Entire crews lost to weapons that tore at the fabric of space-time. Watch captains make the decision to ram enemy positions, sacrificing themselves and their crews to create openings for others. But for every human ship that fell, 10 scourge vessels died. Then 20. Then 100. The humans weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to erase. When the main scourge fleet was destroyed, the humans moved to the habitats, the stations, the infrastructure. They systematically dismantled everything the scourge had built, using weapons that range from careful precision strikes to throw a moon at it and see what happens. Vex watched a human engineering ship approach a scourge processing facility, a massive structure where harvested populations were rendered down to their component materials. The facility was shielded, armored, built to withstand anything. The human ship activated some kind of device that created a localized wormhole. Then it dropped the other end of the wormhole inside a nearby star. The facility and the 300 scourge inside it were vaporized by stellar core temperatures before they could even scream. That seems... Vex searched for the word. Cruel. They dissolved billions of sapients alive, Zhang said flatly. They harvested entire civilizations like cattle. They earned this. Every bit of it. By the end of the 8th hour, the Scourge home cluster was gone. Not defeated. Not conquered. Gone. Every station destroyed. Every ship reduced to debris. Every Scourge nest irradiated. Every habitat collapsed. The humans even chased down the escape pods, hunting every survivor with methodical efficiency. Why? Vex asked. Why not take prisoners? Study them? Learn from them? Zhang looked at her, his expression hard. Because we don't negotiate with genocidal parasites. Because the only good scourge is a dead scourge. Because we want to send a message to every species in this galaxy that thinks harvesting populations is acceptable. What message? That if you try it, we'll end you. Not defeat you. Not contain you. End you. Completely. Utterly. With extreme fucking prejudice. He turned back to the tactical display, where human ships were methodically searching for any remaining scourge presence. In our history, we had a word for this. Carthago delenda, est Carthage must be destroyed. And was it so thoroughly that we still don't know exactly where it was? Zhang said with satisfaction. The scourge are about to learn that lesson. 200 years from now, historians will argue about whether they ever existed at all.